afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us on hashtag No Limits. Hashtag No Limits is about limits that have been placed on people that they have busted through those limits. Ophelia says in Hamlet that we know who we are, but not who we will become. And I believe that 100%. I also believe that there is no better example of that than the caterpillar turning into the butterfly. I mean, really, I have to research this and find out like who was the first person to watch the caterpillar go through all of that and watch it dissolve and think, oh, okay, that's the end of its story. But wait, no, there's more. And watch it turn into this amazing butterfly. And then the butterfly has to struggle to get its wings strong enough in order to be able to fly. So in order for it to get out of the cocoon, we really aren't supposed to help it because it has to have its own struggles to deal with. So all of that said, I forgot to say I'm Shelly Kino, your host of hashtag No Limits. My guest today is Jeff. Jeff and I have known each other for over 20 years. He came to a store that I worked at a long, long time ago, and we just instantly became friends. And we kind of lost track of each other, and then Facebook happened, and we kind of found each other again. So I'm really glad that happened, and I'm really happy that he is joining me today. Jeff has a wonderful story, and I am so excited to share it with you. So Jeff, welcome. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
So I told a little bit about you, but very minimal. So tell the real who Jeff is story.
Wow. You did know me back when I had a lot of hair and it was all one color. And,
you did have a little more hair. Yes, I would agree.
A little bit changed.
More up here, less here.
Well, I was born in Iowa, and life took me on a journey, and that journey ultimately brought me into the military. Quickly, I was a kid who didn't really have a niche. I didn't think I belonged anywhere. I didn't have any friends, didn't have any confidence. And somehow that took me on a path where I said, hey, let's take a guy with no confidence and no direction. Let's have him raise his hand and let's have him join the military. Why not?
Perfect. Makes perfect sense.
Let's have him travel the world, serve his country. Sure. But that path brought me to a base, the closest base to my hometown, to a place where I've been before. My mom graduated from a local high school. We came down here every year or every other year to see her high school classmates. I knew how to get from her friend's house to the mall or to the zoo or to the arch, and that's not where I wanted to go. I wanted the international travel, and I wanted to go to Hawaii, and I even volunteered to go to Alaska, and I got Southern Illinois. Angry, upset, all those words came to mind, but one thing led to another. I got a chance to do some volunteer stuff with kids that were labeled "quote unquote" at-risk kids in the community that I was in, that my church was in. And one thing led to another, led to another, led to another, and it was okay, this is what I need to do. And that journey eventually caused me to get out of the military, to go back to college, to do all the educational stuff. To become a counselor. I'm now a counselor with kids.
That is awesome. And not just kids, but a lot of kids that you see are kids at risk. Is that correct?
Absolutely. The gamut of I don't want to call them obstacles. I'll call them challenges that these kids have.
Yeah. And mental health is so undervalued, I think, in our society. And by that, I mean, it's not talked about. If you have a mental health issue, it's still fairly taboo. It's getting better. And I'm working on that as another part of why we know each other, and how you have helped me out. But yeah, it is something that has always been like, we don't talk about that. We don't know how to deal with that. So we're just not going to talk about it.
Sure.
My guests have probably figured out because it happened a couple times while you spoke that you have a stutter. Um, I know. Oh, I'm sorry. Is that the first time you're hearing that? I so apologize.
Never heard that.
Um, so tell me, what was it like, first of all, growing up? Second of all, in the military, having a stutter, did that have any effect on anything?
Profound effect. I don't remember a time in my life where I didn't have a stutter. Um, and I'm the community I'm from in Eastern Iowa, and in that time frame, they didn't have speech counselors in school. They didn't exist. However, there was one in the community, and I learned later that somebody knew somebody and pulled some strings, and they got me to work with her before she was actually a school employee.
Nice.
But my stutter was bad enough that I couldn't say, "Hi, my name is Jeff." I
Wow.
do it. I had all the textbook obstacles, blocks, the stammer, the just every textbook speech impediment that you can imagine. I had. I don't remember if it was in grade 1 or grade 2, but I began to see her every week. For Friday afternoons, right around 2 p.m. to about 3. I just kind of left the classroom before the IEPs were even a big deal. When I walked down to her classroom, and I got to hang out with Miss Janice. And that continued all the way till probably 10th or 7th grade. And I'm not sure why it stopped. I don't know if she changed positions, she moved, my schedule didn't allow it. I don't remember all the ins and outs. But that's probably a big part of the reason why I didn't have the confidence I needed as a young person. Called names, laughed at, not by any adults, always by kids. Although there have been adults that have laughed at me. My best friends in my childhood were my parents. Not that I wasn't a nice person, but I didn't think anybody liked me. I didn't think I had the confidence to talk to anybody. And your parents, they kind of are obligated to like you. And so I would stay home at night when my friends were going out to do this or do that. We stay home and watch basketball games or whatever movie on TV. My parents would always pass out on the couch because they worked all day. And so I would get a couple hours a night just going like this. I can remember a time in 12th grade. I took French in high school. And yeah, long story. I took French in high school.
I mean, that's a difficult language anyway.
Right. And I liked it though. I took it because it was different and nobody else was taking it, but turns out I liked it. I took it every year through high school. My 12th grade year, we had to read a part of this book in French, and it's like 10, 12 kids in the class. I'm counting ahead to find out what I had to read so I could practice it in my head.
Right.
And it got to my turn, and the first word of line 1, I had this block. And it was all the reactions, your heart's racing, you're sweating, your palms are sweaty, and I couldn't get out the first sound. Wow. And I remember this kid, and I'm not going to name him because we're now friends, but he sat a couple of seats ahead of me, the next row over. He leans back and says some kind of sarcastic response, and that just angered me even more. Right. But I couldn't get out what I needed to say. And it got to a point where I started to cry. So 12th grade, and all that is. And then I'm very aware of my own speech impediment. And then this kid who is the captain of everything, everything I thought I wanted to be, is making a crack, and I ran out of the classroom crying. Ugh. So from that point till, well, probably my 20-year class reunion, I couldn't think about that kid without thinking about that experience. So what do I do then? I joined the military, where you have to talk.
Right.
And I'll tell you this story kind of fast. It's funny. I got assigned a job, a chore, if you will, when I'm in training at basic, and it was a chow runner. And the chow runner's job is to go to the chow hall and announce your flight time to eat. You kind of know these terms, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And I had a script, and I had to read. I had to go. I had the script in my head. And the first day we get there, I run to the chow hall, and I get in the spot, and I'm ready to do it. And I'm lined up at the wrong spot on the table. Problem one.
Oh,
Problem two, I stuttered hardcore on that first word. And so 10 or 12 training instructors jumped on me kind of like that. And I had them coming at me from all corners.
right.
And they, hindsight, it wasn't the best thing to do, but I was known as Airman Pig the rest of the time in training because I stuttered. So,
Oh, like Porky the Pig.
right.
Gotcha.
I got through it. I endured. But the cool rest of that story is the next place I went to in training. I'm minding my own, I'm taking care of my own stuff. And one day this guy walks up to me. He says, "Hey, Morris, I want to talk to you about something." I knew who this guy was. I didn't really know him though. So we went kind of off to the side. He goes, "I want to tell you something, man. I was there in Chow Hall that day when you were called that name." And he said, "I watched all these training instructors to yell and scream at you and really jump on you for an issue that you couldn't control. And you took it, and you didn't break, and you didn't let them win." And he said, "I want to tell you, man, that really inspired me then." So the dude gave me the handshake and the one arm guy bro hug thing.
Right.
And he left. I never saw him again.
Oh my gosh.
I look back at that, and I didn't realize it at the time, but now I do. All of the experiences I had from kindergarten through high school prepared me to deal with that.
Yeah. So what branch? You were in the Air Force, right?
The only one that matters is the Air Force.
Right. That's exactly what my husband would say. Absolutely.
Sure. Right.
And I had mentioned this to him last night when I was talking about it. And I said, so, I when I see stuff in movies and on television about the military, I said, those drill sergeants, if you say something wrong or you don't answer immediately, they're all over you. And he's like, I mean, yeah, but not as extreme as it is in the military.
Right.
But it doesn't matter how extreme it appears to everybody else. It's how extreme it feels to you in the moment that it's happening.
For sure.
So you talked about that one time in the chow hall, but there had to have been so many other times that happened where you weren't able to respond quickly enough, or the stutter did appear within your answer. How long were you in the military?
I did one enlistment of 4 years.
Okay. So was it, I know you said you were in Southern Illinois and so you weren't happy with where you were placed, but was the fact that they were on you, or maybe they weren't on you, were they on you a lot because of the stutter, or not so much?
At training, I was told before I came in, or I was advised before I came in, and your husband can probably tell you this, the key to making it into basic and out is to not ever become known. You want to just blend in. Well, day one, I didn't blend in.
Right.
So I was on their radar the rest of the time. And then I was known as Airman Pig.
Right.
Who, I don't know, there may not have been 10 or 12 guys there, but there were a lot. They were yelling at me from all corners.
Right.
And then however many other airmen that were in the room eating all saw it.
Right.
So for that 6 to 8 weeks, that's what I was known as.
I can't imagine that was a good time.
No, but and not to excuse anything, because by some level of understanding, that wasn't appropriate. But I understand what the reasoning was at the same point in time, what their excuses were anyways. But I think the K-12 experience prepared me to deal with that. It wasn't the first time I've been laughed at. It wasn't the first time I've been called names.
Yeah.
You know.
I know, but that just doesn't make it better. It
Agreed.
doesn't make it okay.
Agreed. Agreed. But then, as we'll talk about eventually here, I'm sure that also prepared me to do what I'm doing now, though, as well. And we'll get to that later.
Yeah. So, well, actually, it's not later. It is now, because after you got out of the military, you said you went back to college and you got into the profession that you're in now. So, ladies and gentlemen, a person with a stutter, you would think, would not get into a job where they have to talk a lot. So first of all, he went into the military. So we already know he's a little not right. I can say that because Jeff knows it. That's all said in love and jest.
Sure.
And then, what do you do now?
I'm a clinical social worker who is currently providing mental health services to children and adolescents, ranging from about age 6. And when I say adolescent, I put that in quotes because I think my oldest client's about 26 to 28 right now. Mm-hmm. So I talk for a living.
Right. Do you think that because of that, that you've been able to connect with some kids, because not necessarily that their experiences were exactly the same as yours, but you had struggles too?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I tell when I meet a new client and their parents, I tell them we're on a journey, and my goal for this is that when you get to the end of our journey, wherever that's at, that we look back to today and things have improved. Mm-hmm. I go, because I've walked in your shoes. I may not have been in what you're in, but I know what it's like to not have confidence, to not think anybody likes them, to be called names, to be thought of as unintelligent, incompetent, things that I've felt or have been told, or right. even as an adult, as a married husband with kids and doing this kind of work, there's still times where I'll have folks will say, I don't know if it's going to work out because he can't communicate with the best of them. And that, as you know, that's almost a challenge to me.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I remember, when we first met, like I said, over 20 years ago. And the reason I know it was over 20 years ago specifically is because I didn't have my daughter yet, and right. She's now 21. So,
right.
And, I think we had talked then, and then we ended up going to the same church for a while. And we talked a little bit there too, that people still don't understand that a stutter is something you don't have control over necessarily.
Right.
And
it'd be nice. I tell clients that I work with, I go, if there was an operation I could have, I would have had it. If right. There's a pill I could take, I would have done it twice. But the reality is there's not.
Right. So you mentioned it took years of therapy from elementary through high school. Mm-hmm. And obviously in our conversation, it has appeared a couple of times. Are there things that you can do to make it less frequent, or are there things that happen that make it more frequent?
Wow.
Sorry, I didn't preface you with that question.
I answer that question because the answer to that question is yes to both, but then the next question is, could it be what?
Right.
And that's what's hard. That's what's hard to answer, because what may work today won't work tomorrow. Okay. I've learned in my communication style how to talk around stuff. I've learned. I rely on my wit probably way more than I probably should, and that was probably a defense mechanism I learned as a kid.
Mhm.
Um, I may not be able to communicate with the best of them, but I'm gonna make it laugh, or at least try to make it laugh
Right.
in that process to establish rapport, to establish a comfort, to get hopefully to help you get past whatever uncomfortability you might have with how I do or don't speak.
So I know being in special education, that I had a couple students that stuttered throughout the years, and the speech pathologists that I work with were always wonderful.
Yeah.
Um, the one thing that I remember being told most often was, "Don't say hurry up."
Mm.
Um, so I want to just put that out there,
Yeah.
that that does not help. And in actuality, what does it do when somebody, and I'm sure people still say comments to you like, "Spit it out, hurry up, say what you want to say."
It it increases the anxiety, one.
Mhm.
Um, and if I'm being honest, there are times where it ticks me off. And in raising my hand here, I don't always handle that as good as I should. Um, there have been times where I've been at stores and the cashier will make a comment, and I think back to um, one example at a store in the area where whatever excuse, I had a bad day, long day, whatever, the cashier was extra sarcastic about it. And I just kind of stopped my transaction and said, I talked to a manager now. And hindsight, that might not have been the best way to approach that, but I did. Um, Embarrassed my wife pretty hardcore. um, there's been times where with clients, I've learned that a person who laughs at a stutter isn't laughing at the stutter; they're laughing at their own uncomfort, their their own issue with. They're uncomfortable with it, and so if I see them squirm or start to laugh at it, I'll just acknowledge it up front. I'll say, guys, I stutter. Guess what? I've done it my entire life. We're gonna have to learn how to get past this.
Yeah.
Just to let's call a spade a spade. Let's put the cards on the table, and let's have that discussion.
What an excellent point that you just made about their uncomfortableness. Um, because as I learned and as I studied throughout special education, I realized that behaviors are communication,
Sure.
and behaviors are personal to the person exhibiting the behavior, not toward the person receiving the behavior.
Absolutely.
So that is so light bulb moment, I hope, for some of the listeners, is that, you know, yeah, you're receiving that laughter, but it's not at you. It's about the person laughing because, and I think oftentimes too, that's the same with seeing um, aggressive behaviors in
Mhm.
people. I just the other day was at the store, and there was a woman whose child was very upset for whatever reason. And the mom was doing her best to get through the store and get what she needed and get
Sure.
out. And I mean, this kid was, um, it was a Target. So, everybody knows, approximately how big a Target is. When I walked into the store, they were in the exact opposite corner of the store, and I could hear the kid screaming.
Right. Right.
Um, just so happened that our paths crossed, and I went up to the mom and I tapped her on the shoulder, and she turned around and she was startled. She's like, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." And I said, "Don't be sorry.
Mm.
I just want to give you a hug and tell you to
Yeah.
to stay strong. You're doing what you need to do."
Hang in there.
But
Right.
there were other people around that were watching.
Mhm.
And I think, and I honestly have been guilty of that myself. I'm like, do I say something? Do I not say something? Can I help? You don't really know what to do.
Sure.
Um, but I think a lot of that is our own uncomfortableness,
Mhm.
because I don't know how to respond. I'm not familiar with what to do in that situation. I don't understand why that situation is happening. Um, so I really want to nail that point home, that it really is someone else's problem that they're dealing with that causes their response to
And
you.
it took me 29 years and some change to reach that point.
Right.
And it was with a girl I worked with when I first began to work in this field. The girl was 6 and I wasn't a parent yet, didn't understand. I had to transport her from A to B. I didn't understand childproof locks and car seat laws. And so I put this girl in the back seat of my car, just got her all strapped in, and we're driving from A to B. We're on the interstate. All of a sudden, in my mirror, I can see her unbuckle, start to crawl across the back seat of my car, and she's playing with the door handle. Oh my gosh! So I get off the road, and I turn on the blinkers, and I go back there and didn't handle this in the best way. But I go, "What are you doing?" You know? And she looks at me and she goes, "Mr. Jeff," and I go, "What?" I'm here.
Right.
Looks to me, she goes, "Why do you talk funny?" At 6.
Right.
And without hesitation, looked at her. I said, "Girl, I've talked this way my whole life. Who says I talk funny?"
And I shouldn't
And then,
laugh because you were talking to a 6-year-old, but I get it.
it was a debt, and her response was, "Wow, okay."
Right.
And I'm doing everything I could to not cry because that just came out,
Right.
you know. And so I got her strapped in, and I gave her, messed up her hair a little bit, and figured out the childproof lock thing, and got back into my car seat. In the front, I'm doing this because at that moment, at that spot on the interstate, is where what you just said makes sense to me. It's not the issue isn't mine; it's everybody else's.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. And that's one of the main reasons for this show, is because I want people to stop being uncomfortable or to work through that uncomfortableness.
Sure.
And, be cognizant of their own thoughts of, I don't understand this. And that makes me nervous. And sometimes nervous comes out as laughter.
Right.
So, or sometimes when I don't understand, especially with kids and other kids, because they don't understand. I mean, that's what all those kids were expressing, but in a poor way when they said things to you as a kid or as a high schooler, is that I don't understand. It makes me uncomfortable because it's not what I'm used to. And therefore, I'm going to laugh or I'm going to make a joke because then that puts the attention on you instead of me.
100%. Right.
Yeah. So we have a comment here. It says, I remember being embarrassed by my daughter's behavior when she was young until I realized those behaviors are a part of who she is. Then I began to embrace her behaviors. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. And thank you. Thank you for that comment. And hi, Greg. Greg is one of my loyal watchers, so I'm happy to have him here with us today. So before I move on to your family,
Sure.
Is there anything else that any words of advice or suggestions that you have or stories that you want to tell about being a counselor? Because your kids that you're working with are kids that limits are being placed upon.
100%. 100%. I mean, I think that kind of like what you've said, these limits don't define who you are. There's an incredible irony. Whenever I'm done in this, whenever I end this journey, whatever point, there's an incredible irony in the fact that I'm the kid who couldn't say, "Hi, my name is Jeff," who gets paid to talk.
Right.
Those limits, those definitions that I thought others placed on me, that I placed upon myself, or whatever, I let those define who I am. And I mentioned earlier that kid in high school French class. There was 20 years where I didn't think about this kid. I didn't give this kid a thought in my head. Well, 20-year class reunion pops up, and now everything's done online, and so everything's being planned on Facebook. And I get pretty soon I get a I may know this person alert on
Right.
Facebook, and it's this same kid that sat 2 seats ahead of me back in French. And all those old heart palpitation stuff came back. At this point, we're 6-8 weeks out. We've paid our money. We've got the vacation time. And I'm telling my wife, I don't know that I want to go to this now. There's a chance I can run into this kid, this guy.
Right.
No. Well, we went because I don't like to waste money.
It's a good motivator for me too, to be honest.
We got there early, and then pretty soon he walks in with his wife, and I see him coming towards me. And you know how it goes. You're in group, everyone's talking, and you're catching up, and you're showing pictures of your kids and whatnot. Eventually, he makes his way to our group, and this conversation is going to take place.
Right.
And it's a conversation I avoided, didn't want to think about, tried to get out of. And eventually, he sticks his hand out and says, "Hey, Jeff, how have you been?" And so I gave him the casual, I'm okay. And he goes, "So what are you doing now in life?" I said, "Well, I'm a therapist." And he goes, "Like what, health?" I said, "No, I'm mental health." And he goes, "Wow, that's really awesome. So what age are your clients?" I told him kids. And so he goes, "Man, I don't know how you do that." We had that discussion. And then and I said, "Yeah, man, the irony is I'm the same kid that you laughed at back in high school because I couldn't talk." I just put it out there.
Good for you.
And what was crazy about it was he comes back, he says, "Man, I don't remember that." And so the discussion went on, and we kind of had this, let's wipe the slate clean, man. He goes, "I'm sorry, I didn't realize the impact that had then. We were kids, we were dumb, we do dumb stuff."
Right.
I took out of that that a person only has power over us that we let them have over us.
Yeah.
And now me and this guy are friends. Whatever that means now, because we're all online on Facebook.
Right. Yeah.
Now we talk all the time, and there were 20 years. I let one experience affect 20 years of my life.
Right.
Relationships that could have been different. So.
Yeah. Now I don't want to leave this topic because that is so very true. And one of my guests a couple weeks ago, Alex, he said basically that he had learned from, I forget now who he said he learned it from, but basically that, if something is upsetting to you or something bothers you, that be upset with it, be bothered by it, go through that feeling. But then after, and he said 30 seconds, I tend to think it has to be longer than 30 seconds, but
quick,
he
right?
said, yeah, that's pretty quick. He said, but after that, then it's on you. It's your choice to hold on to it. And I just resonated with that so much because I had similar experiences in high school, where something and I'd mentioned this in another episode, I think on a maybe Friday with Fran, but I had attempted suicide in high school. And my first day back after that, and it had been months, kids made fun of me because they didn't know why I had been out. This was long before the days of social media, which thank God.
Yeah, right.
Because it would have only been worse. But yeah, I mean, there were people that day they were making fun of me and commenting things. And
right.
To this day, I haven't seen some of them because they never showed up to class reunions.
Right.
I've reached out to some of them in Facebook, kind of the same thing. Like we've kind of wiped the slate clean, but they don't remember. People make flippant comments and they have no idea how that comment lands to the person that they're making it toward. So
I know how tough it was then, and kind of like what you touched on. I couldn't imagine it now, how hard it would have been now. I mean, then we could escape it, kind of. Now you really can't escape it.
Right. Yeah.
And I heard it once said, and I forget who made this comment, but it's about that topic. That's weight that you don't have to carry. Don't carry that weight, because that weight will drag you down.
Yeah. And Greg made this comment. He didn't see you the way you thought he did.
Nope. Nope.
Yeah. And we do that. We make assumptions all the time based on what one comment that somebody makes. Or sometimes, even if they make multiple comments, they can still change their perspective.
Sure. Right.
And it sounds like what Greg said. He didn't see you the same way that you thought he did at that time, but
Yeah.
People certainly can change their perspective. So I don't want to let you go without talking about your family, because you have 2 children that are adopted.
I do.
And one specifically that you adopted from a foreign country.
Yes, ma'am.
So tell us a little bit about her.
Wow. How do I cover this?
You have 25 minutes. That's all you get.
Well, I was blessed to be able to be made aware of adoptions, both international and here in the U.S. I was made aware of it through some life events, but also my first job in this field was working in adoptions. So as I became aware of adoptions, I became aware of international adoptions. And that process took myself and my daughter's mom over to Russia in 2005. Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. We hopped on a plane and flew halfway around the world to Moscow, where eventually we went to a region. We met our daughter. We met this cute little brown-eyed girl who didn't have a home.
And from my understanding, not only did she not have a family, a home, but in the orphanages there at the time, she really wasn't given a lot of love, any love, and she wasn't given much attention.
Not by what we would hope would happen. I can honestly say they do the best with what they have. From a resource standpoint, from a manpower standpoint, but it's not enough. Her orphanage, I don't know how many kids were there. It was birthed to about age 4, and we never saw probably 10 adults at any one point in time in the entire building. So you have to divide your time up and resources up amongst however many kids are there, and there's just not enough time or manpower or resources to give the kids the attention and love that they need.
Right. So you brought this beautiful little baby home, and she was very tiny, if I remember correctly. And
at a year, she weighed 11 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's just crazy.
I can remember when we first heard her cry. It wasn't a first trip. It wasn't a second trip. It might have been our last trip. And her cry was it wasn't even a squeak. It was a tiny little noise. And I can remember saying to her mom, her cry is so quiet. That's it? Oh my gosh, that's it?
Right.
I'm a new parent. I don't know anything about anything yet. Now it changed. It definitely changed. But at first, there just wasn't much of anything. And I don't know if that's what she's kind of learned. That what's the point of crying? It's not going to matter. I don't know. But.
Right. Yeah. Because from what I recall, I mean, they could, like you said, because there were so few people there, they could cry for long periods of time and not get any attention for that cry, because there just wasn't somebody there to be able to give them that attention. Yeah. So you get her home here to the United States. And so tell us a little bit about what those first few years were like.
Oh my gosh. The first handful of years was a lot of, I'm learning how to be a parent, which when you go from not being a parent to congratulations, learn how to be a parent, you know, to a lot of comments about she's so little, because she's small, but she's acting like an age, like a child her age would act.
Mm-hmm.
So we would either get questions, wow, she's so advanced, or the opposite side, why is she so tiny? Which would then lead to her mom and I having to decide how much of her story are we going to share.
Right.
Because depending on who we're talking to determines how that discussion goes. And we had people coming up to us in stores that may have meant well, but said some things that are just so off the wall, inappropriate, that they didn't know what else to say, but they felt like they had to have a comment.
Right.
Because of her age and her backstory, she qualified for early intervention. She qualified for 2 years of that. So we used every single chance of that, which then automatically qualified her to get a head start, a spot head start.
Mm-hmm.
I bring this up. So I took her to her Head Start screening, and by this point in time, I'm working on my master's. I'm working in foster care at the time, and they're doing a screening, and they're asking us her story. How much she weighed at birth? What's her health history? And I can only answer a handful of questions.
Right.
I watched the individual at the school doing the assessment automatically begin to steer the discussion towards attention problems, ADHD stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of had to jump in and said, let's skip ahead about 10 pages, because that was a job I did already.
Right.
And hindsight, they learned the backstory, begin to automatically assume there's attention related problems. Rightly or wrongly, that was the knowledge they had. And so we began to have a fight, for lack of any other word, a fight.
Right. Right.
To get her educational needs met appropriately. She did great having 2 years of Head Start because she could use the extra support. She went to kindergarten, she did fantastic. And in grade 1, she began to have problems with school. There were a lot of other changes in her life at the time that were going on, but also we were beginning to see a lot of school problems, problems that just weren't her. So we get a letter in the mail saying, "Hey, your daughter's having XYZ challenges, XYZ problems. We're going to meet to discuss retention." And my ears perked up, but I went, "Wait a minute, hang on. This is the job I do. I kind of know how the process works. We haven't met yet. We haven't done an evaluation. We haven't done." And so I went from being a dad to being an advocate, because that's what I am, career-wise. And so we began to discuss IEP stuff, and we've not had an evaluation. And why do you think she has ADHD stuff when I'm seeing anxiety stuff, and I'm seeing this, and I'm seeing that, and I want to be able to observe, and they didn't want me to observe because of my bias and all of those things. And so we got all the players together at the table, and had probably the longest IEP meeting I've ever been involved in. It was a Friday afternoon, began at 2, and ended at 5. So you've been enough of those meetings to know that doesn't happen too often.
It does now with what I do, because I make them last that long, because I want everything understood by everybody at the table.
So then that wasn't the case. They were trying to
half hour, 45 minutes, and you're out.
They were trying to retain her without evaluating and determining everything else.
Right.
And so we came to an agreement to have her go on to the next grade. They would do the evaluations early in the year. And then if there need to be accommodations made, there'd be accommodations made. Was a little tense. All the relationships were tense, and
Mhm.
I got that. But come fall, we did the evaluation, and when you know it, there was some anxiety, some school-related performance anxieties that were manifesting,
Right.
which could easily be misconstrued as ADHD. It wasn't. It was just comprehension stuff,
Right.
cognitions. And so they began then the process of adapting and modifying and adapting and accommodating and adapting and modifying, adapting and accommodating. And probably by grade 5, we had a good plan, a good track that seemed to fit her, and she's thrived since. You know,
Yeah. And she is 16 now,
yeah,
which
crazy.
just blows my mind.
Yep.
And she's a beautiful girl. And I do have the privilege of knowing her personally, and I don't think I've ever met, and my own daughter included, any child with a heart like hers.
Yeah.
She just radiates kindness. She wants to help anybody and everybody that she possibly can. She is, from my understanding, friend to everybody. And again, this goes back to, that we attended the same church together. Her heart for God is just beyond anything I've ever seen. And she just, she would come to us and ask us to pray for this person or that person. And because she believed in that power. And yeah, always the brightest smile. I miss that, we don't get to see her,
Right.
and other people too, but but yeah, I mean, just her presence would put a smile on my face.
And and even when I look back to her in the orphanage, that's who she'd been since the beginning.
Yeah.
I mean, that's who God made her to be.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. And I'm so proud of her. I mean, she put so much effort into her classes and into her schoolwork. And I've also had that privilege to be able to work with her a little bit on the side. And I know that, she wants to do well.
Yeah.
She wants to be successful. She wants to know the things that she needs to know.
Yep.
And I'm just really, really proud of her and you, and her mom, for all that, you guys have done for her in order to make sure that she was on that right path. That those limits that people tried to place upon her didn't stick.
No.
And so that would be, something that I would recommend to anybody listening is trust your gut. I mean, Jeff had the psychologist evaluation knowledge of, how that kind of all went. And I kind of vaguely remember when you guys were going through that. Yeah, because I remember you reaching out to me, and I don't know that I was all that helpful to you, but hopefully something I said or did was helpful. But you have to stick with it. Sometimes people do have biases. It's not anything that they intentionally have. It just happens. And so for whatever reason, they had the bias that the things that you were describing about her early on were going to lead them down the path of attention issues.
And with the training that they had and the knowledge that they had, sure. She would check every box that would say, if you're born in a less than ideal home, okay, you're born in this country, the odds are that you're exposed to certain things, okay. That research indicates, well, sure, then you can expect attention issues or focus issues or kind of on and on. But I could come back and say, yes, but she can watch 2 hours of Dora the Explorer, sit on the couch, not move, and tell you every single thing that occurred in those 2 hours. Those don't fit.
Right.
And one positive about our community is it's a small community, and the professionals get to know the professionals.
Right.
And so I was able to just say to the administrators or whatever, hey, here's what I see. I understand what you're saying, but recognize my professional experiences as well. And instead of it being contentious, why can't we work together here?
Yes, absolutely.
I was willing to bring in an advocate because there were some changes that were taking place behind the scenes that they didn't know I knew about yet, or they hadn't been announced yet, and I was aware of those because of my job.
Right.
And so I was willing to bring those players in. I didn't want to if we didn't have to, because at the end of the day, we still had to work together. Our desires are the same, ultimately.
Absolutely.
I had to stop. We had to realize that we're not the enemy here. We can work together. How do we make that work?
Right. And as a master IEP coach, as an education consultant, that's what I try to come in and do, is to help both sides remember that there's an individual that we are focused on at these meetings.
Sure.
And it's not about your expertise. It's not about my expertise. It's about our expertise and how we can use that knowledge to work with the child and help that child reach their best potential.
Absolutely.
And I don't know why we're like that. You know, I mean, it happens from parent side, it happens from teacher side, where it's like, no, this is what I see. Well, this is what I see. Well, this is what I know. Well, this is what I know. And it just seems like that gap gets farther apart instead of lessening to the point where, okay, well, this is what I see and this is what I see. So let's merge that and let's figure this all out together.
Pride.
Yeah, it really is. I mean,
ultimately pride. Yeah. I know better. I know better. I know better. I'm right. I'm right.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It really is, and hopefully, I'm changing that by what I do now. And there's a whole network of master IEP coaches around the country, and that is one of our main goals, is to try to have more collaboration and understanding.
Right.
Because yes, I can be an advocate. And I can go in, and I said this to somebody the other day, I can be somebody's worst nightmare. I really can if I have to be. You can talk to my husband, he'll tell you. But that's not really the goal that I want going into these. You know, I really want to collaborate. I really want to make things better.
Sure.
I mean, my tagline now is making the world better for all, one IEP at a time.
Yeah,
and that's really what I want to do, because I feel like we do miss out on a lot of opportunities and a lot of growth in students because our pride gets in our way in those situations.
Yeah, right.
So we just have a few minutes and then I'm going to wrap up. So I don't want to leave out your other your other adopted daughter or your son. I mean, I know that their story is not as involved as your daughter that we were just talking about, but I mean, they are still very important. And so I don't want to let you go without saying something about them.
Wow. So I'll start with the daughter, also adopted. She was also on an IEP. She had some educational challenges early. She had a seizure disorder young. And to deal with that, and I forget the medication. This is before I was really a part of the life. But there was a medication that she had to take to help with the seizures, but that impacted math and some upper level stuff. And so her mom also kind of had to go through the process of IEPs and trying to meet her needs and determine what accommodations were needed. And she went on into high school, and each each year they backed up the accommodations a little bit, and they backed up the accommodations a little bit, and backed them up a little bit, to where by 11th and 12th grade, I don't think she used anything. They were there
Awesome.
just in case she needed it, but she was off the medication at that point. Hadn't had a seizure in 6, 8, 10 months, a year, and then it was a matter of confidence.
Yeah.
The IEP team, they were there for support if she needed it. She knew she could rely on them. She didn't. She graduated last May, and she did trigonometry remotely
Oh,
and got an A.
wow.
So
That's incredible.
that blew me away.
Yeah.
So now in college, she's doing a college thing. My son was born with a club foot. So we dealt with some of the health challenges and obstacles that came with that. But the IEP team, we were also able to get him support at school from a physical therapy standpoint if it was needed. Because he's, like most kids, they're klutzes when they're young.
Right.
And his repaired foot and leg kind of presents his own challenges. And he went through a period of time, I think it was grade 1, where he was always, he would fall. And so we're like, well, we have this documentation, the school knows about it. Can we get him support at school if needed? And we were able to connect with that same staff that I had problems with many years earlier, and to get him the help that he needed then. And now he's 8.5 and playing sports, and he doesn't like being told no, and doesn't like being told he can't. Because watch him.
Yeah.
He ran. I like to run, and he did a race with me a couple years back. He did a 5K a couple years back at age 6 or 7. Wasn't fast. It wasn't great, and he was in pain because his leg hurt. Yeah. But he didn't quit. And
I forgot to talk about that other part of you. That's also, I mean, first of all, you went to the military, so that made you a little weird, and then you run these long marathons, so that's another part of you that's really weird. And I'm not just talking like the 26-mile marathons. You like to do the 50 and the beyond.
Yeah. The ultra marathon world is what I'm playing with now.
Yeah.
I've done a 50-mile ultra marathon. I've attempted 2 100s. I pulled out of one of them at 75-mile, injured, and then the other one at mile 36, injured. But I'm still out there plugging away, chasing that rabbit. Kind of one of those hashtag no limits. Don't tell me what I can't do.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it.
Yeah. That's awesome. There's so much about you that makes you part of the hashtag No Limits team. And Greg, thank you for your comment.
For sure.
I'm not going to share it. I can't. But yeah, I'm very happy to have been part of Greg's life and his daughter's life. So you have like 10 seconds. Is there any last fleeting words of advice, encouragement, anything that you would like to shout out?
A couple things. Don't tell anybody what they can't do. I know that's our theme. That obviously makes sense. That's why we're talking. But don't tell them what they can't do, because watch them.
Yeah.
Okay. But two, Shelly, I've known you for 20 plus years, and it's been cool how our journeys have done this. It's cool to see what you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing. You are helping others out there.
Well, thank you very much. And if anyone else would like to work with me or to get to know me a little bit better, you can go to my website, shellykino.com. You can also, on that spot, I'm trying to find the link here. You can get a free checklist. If you're an educator, I have a free educator checklist. If you're a parent, I have a free parent checklist for virtual or in-person IEP meetings. I would love to work. I love working with all sides of the table. As a teacher, that's where I was, and that's where I felt like we did our best work. when we were all there collaborating and working together. So Jeff, thank you again so much. Like this post, share this post, comment on it. That's what we need you to do. Have a great day.
Thanks, Shelley.